Good morning. Today, I'm very proud of myself because I've accomplished something that nobody else has been able to accomplish. I was just informed, while on the helicopter, that our president has finally released a birth certificate. I'd want to look at it, but I hope it's true, so that we can get on to much more important matters, so the press can stop asking me questions. He should have done it a long time ago. Why he didn't do it when the Clintons asked for it, why he didn't do it when everybody else was asking for it, I don't know. But I am really honored, frankly, to have played such a big role in hopefully getting rid of this issue. Now, we have to look at it. We have to see, is it real? Is it proper? What's on it? But I hope it checks out beautifully. I am really proud. I am really honored. Now we can talk about oil. We can talk about gasoline prices. We can talk about China ripping off this country. We can talk about OPEC doing numbers on us like nobody has ever done before. We can get on to issues, and hopefully when I sit down with interviews, people don't start talking about birth certificate, like they've been doing. So I feel I've accomplished something really, really important, and I'm honored by it. Okay.
You say you're taking credit for it. A lot of people say what you caused was a distraction.
No, I'm taking great credit. And you have to ask the president, why didn't he do this a long time ago? Why didn't he do it a long time ago? When Hillary Clinton was asking, when everybody was asking, why didn't he do it? It's shocking. It's shocking.
You don't ask other presidents. Why is that relevant?
It's very relevant.
Have you ever asked
Why isn't it? People ask me for my birth certificate. People asked me for my birth certificate, and I gave it 2 days later.
Mr. Trump, you said yesterday, you said 2 days ago, we hear that it's missing. Before that, you said you wouldn't believe what my investigators on the ground are saying. Do the people in this country now need to doubt the information you're being given? Were you making this up? Where did this information come from?
No, I think what you're going to see, first we have to look at the certificate, but I am really happy that this has finally taken place because we have some issues that are unbelievably important.
But you didn't answer my question, sir. You said we...
I think I did. No, I did answer your question.
Trump, what are your qualifications to assess this? You say you have to look at it and you have to decide. What gives you the authority,
Well, I'm going to look at it, and many other people are going to look at it. You're going to have many people looking at it, and obviously they're going to have to make a decision because it is rather amazing that all of a sudden it materializes. But I hope it's the right deal. I hope it's the right deal. We have to look at it. A lot of people have to look at it. Experts will look at it. And I am really happy. And honestly, I'm very proud that I was able to bring this to a point. Nobody else was. The Clintons during their campaign weren't. All of the other people that talked about it, for years they weren't. I am really honored by this. Okay, next question.
What do you think this says, though, right now? If it's not true, for example, does it mean that the country is led by an illegal president? Is that what you're saying?
Well, let's hope it is true. I don't want to answer that question because it's too negative. Honestly, the question's so negative. At this point, I don't want to answer that question because you're asking a very negative question. If it's not true, if it's not really his birth certificate, I don't want to answer that. I hope it's true. And the reason I hope it's true, because we have very big problems in this country. This country is suffering right now. I mean, I have people, they can't get gasoline in their tank. They're topping out their tank because they can't afford to do it properly. They've never had this before. You look at resorts around the country. They're not doing any business because people don't drive. And then if you look at Saudi Arabia, what they did, it's unbelievable. 3 days ago, they announced essentially that they're going to raise the price of oil by cutting back on production. And we have nobody to speak to these people. We have nobody that calls or talks and says, you're not going to do it, fellas. We're protecting you. You wouldn't be there except for us. We have nobody. Now, yesterday, our president said that he has very little impact over the price of gasoline. I think he's 100% wrong because OPEC is setting the price of fuel. We have oil all over the place. all over the place. Every ship at sea is loaded up with oil. They don't know where to dump it. And yet every day we're setting records. And pretty soon we're going to be at that 150 a barrel, the all-time record. Now, when the president says he has no power over that, I mean, it's pretty sad.
But in your mind, is it possible that the country is being led right now by an illegitimate president? Is that possible?
Well, I certainly hope it's not possible, and I hope we've accomplished a lot by what I've been doing for the last couple of months, and I hope we can start talking about OPEC and China taking our jobs and making everything for us. I hope we can start doing that. What I would do differently is come down really hard on OPEC. If you look at these nations, they wouldn't even be there except for us. You take a look at Kuwait. I mean, we handed Kuwait back to the people that right now essentially own Kuwait, because it's really ownership more than anything else. We handed it back. They never paid us. You look at these nations, Saudi Arabia, we protect them. And then they want to raise the price of fuel. It's not high enough. So it would be very easy and very quick to get gasoline prices down. Gasoline prices are at $4, $5. They're going to $6 and $7, as sure as you're standing there.
You're in your Trump. Today.
Yes.
Mr. Trump, in terms of credibility, you came up here once in a black helicopter in 1988 and you were running as a Democrat. Why should people, what makes you a
No, I wasn't. Let me just tell you, it's sort of interesting because New Hampshire's been a very special place. I came up in 1988 or 89, a long time ago, as a favor to a friend of mine, and I made a speech. But it's a place that I've always liked, and I've been to actually many times, New Hampshire. And in making the speech, everyone thought I was running for president. As you know, I wasn't running for president. I never said I was running for president. I made a speech on success for a friend of mine around 1988. And the buzz was unbelievable because it happened to be New Hampshire. And it was sometime prior to primary season. So, in a way, New Hampshire sort of got me started. It's sort of interesting. But I did come up in 1988. I made a speech. It was really a speech on success, much so, more so than politics. In fact, I don't know if politics played a role in the speech. And it was great. It really did. It sort of got me started. But I did that speech actually for a friend. I didn't do it because I was running, because I wasn't running.
Why should people think you're a Republican? That's what I'm asking you. So why should people think you're a Republican?
Well, I am a Republican. I'm a very strong Republican, and I've been a Republican for a long while, and I'm proud of it. And I think that I'm quite conservative as a Republican. And if you look at the polls, I mean, I just saw 2 more polls today where I'm leading the polls. And I think the fact that I was able to get him to finally come out and issue a birth certificate can only help. And I will say this, one other thing. One of the big pollsters who came out with a very strong poll where I'm leading just yesterday said if you actually announced, your poll numbers would go substantially up, because a lot of people think I'm having a good time.
Why don't you
I'm not having a good time.
Financials. Announce right here. Look at all these cameras.
Are you an intelligent man? Let me ask you. Are you intelligent? Have you been listening? No, I just don't know. Are you intelligent? Because here's the problem. I hate saying it because it sounds trivial, but I have a very, very successful show on television, the #1 show on NBC, a show that even the New York Times yesterday said is a very, very successful show. I have a show called Celebrity Apprentice. I cannot announce until that show is over. Just can't do it. I'd love to do it for you, but I can't do it. When the show is over, let me explain. When the show is over, and the finale will be on May 22nd. When the show is over, I will then be free to announce. I think you will be surprised at a number of things, but I think you will be surprised at what my announcement is.
Mr. Trump, just one other thing about the president. You also raised these questions about his education credentials.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to say today that all these issues should be put to the side and that you accept that Mr. Obama is who he says
No.
he is? Or do you still think there are legitimate issues? to
Everything's
raise now?
legitimate. You ask me questions that, frankly, nobody gets angry. The press doesn't get angry. Look, the press is very protective of President Obama. Very protective. They're not protective of me, but they're protective of President Obama. And they're not protective of most other people either, in all fairness. The word is, according to what I've read, that he was a terrible student when he went to Occidental. He then gets to Columbia. He then gets to Harvard. I heard at Columbia wasn't a very good student. He then gets to Harvard. How do you get into Harvard if you're not a good student? Now, maybe that's right or maybe it's wrong, but I don't know why he doesn't release his records. Why doesn't he release his Occidental records? Well, I'll tell you why, who cares? Because everyone says he was a great student. Well, if he was, that's great, and if he wasn't, that's great. I was a very good student.
Why don't the diplomas speak for themselves? Why do you continue to...
Well, I think academics, you know, I'll tell you what, education has always meant a lot to me. And I think education is good. And I think if he wants to release it, that's fine. And if he doesn't want to release it, that's fine too. But the word is, you know, you'd think he'd want to release it, actually. Because the word is he wasn't a good student and he ended up getting into Columbia and Harvard. And I'd like to know, well, this is what I read written by some of the people in this room. I'd like to know, how does he get into Harvard? How does he get into Columbia if he isn't a good student? It's an interesting thing. Yes? Well, it's not innuendo. I'm just reporting what I read. Hey, I read stuff that you people write. Hey, look, what's worse innuendo than what I go through? I mean, what people say about me. I mean, I have the ultimate innuendo. But I promise you one thing, nobody will protect me like they protect our president. So, just in finishing, I'm really honored and I'm really proud that I was able to do something that nobody else could do. I'm really happy about it. And now experts will check it, and everybody will go over it, and I hope everything's going to be perfect. And by the way, if you remember, from day one, I said, I hope he gives his certificate, because I don't want this issue clouding a campaign. Okay.
What do you need to see on the birth certificate to feel like it's a true...
Well, that's not up to me. That's up to experts. I'm sure there's plenty of experts that will look at it.
Trump, do you plan to release your tax records after...
Why have you given over $1 million in helping to get Democrats elected over the years?
Well, I've had a lot of friends that are Democrats and a lot of friends that are Republicans. And over the years, if you know, New York is a largely Democratic place. It's very rare that you see in New York City, as an example, for a Republican to get elected. The numbers are staggering, where a Democrat will get 94% of the vote. And that's if the Republican is doing a good job. So it's a very, very interesting fact that it happens to be almost all Democratic. Over the years, I've supported many Republicans, many Democrats, and I think there's something nice about that. When I watch Washington and look at Washington, and I see the way they fight, like cats and dogs, just fight like nobody's ever fought before. People that have been in the Senate, that are friends of mine for a long time, they said, we've never seen hatred. You know, they used to be friends. They'd argue, and then they'd go out to dinner together, the Republican and the Democrat, and they'd get things done. Now we're like at a stalemate. I think it would be great if somebody got in there that actually could get along with both sides. And I know many of the people that are on the Democratic side, and in some cases they're friends of mine. I get along with them great. And I think it's time for people to sit down, get together, and get this mess that we're in right now solved. So I view that as an asset, not a liability. Yes, ma'am.
How have your views on the neighborhood issues changed since 1988, the last time?
Well, my views change, and you know, when I talk, I do a lot of speaking about success. And I tell people, you have to remain flexible, because the world changes. The world will always change. And, you know, you can't just have, like, an idea, and then this idea, it's like go through a wall. Sometimes you have to be able to go under the wall, around the wall, over the wall. So I've always said, have a goal, work hard, but you have to have a certain flexibility. Now, if you look at virtually every candidate that runs for office or currently running for office, they've had views that are much different 10 years ago than they have now. So my views changed, and virtually all of the candidates, their views changed. And that's not, I don't think, a very uncommon thing.
Mr. Trump, are you playing with us or are we playing with you?
Well, I actually think you're playing with me, but I accept that.
And will you play with us a little more, or is it going to end when you make the announcement that surprises you?
That's a very interesting question. I think you're going to be very surprised.
Ann Coulter said last night you are not running for president. You compared you to Charlie Sheen. She said this is all just a show.
Ann Coulter? Hey, you'll have to see. You know what? We have 3 weeks. Not a big deal. In 3 weeks, you're going to see. I think you're going to be very surprised.
Well, what do you think
And I think if I do run, I'll do very well. And I think, look, I'm already leading the polls and I'm not running. Am I leading the polls? Thank you.
Republicans, yes, you are.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, excuse me. CNN did a poll. CNN did a poll recently where Obama and I are statistically tied. If you'd like, I could send it to you. Just call up CNN.
How confident are you that you'll beat Obama?
I think I'd beat Obama. If I look at this economy and how bad it's doing, if I look at this economy, it's doing so poorly, and I think ultimately it's going to be largely about that. You look at what he's doing in Libya, which is a total disaster. Nobody even knows what's going on in Libya. You look at what's happening with gasoline prices, where he said he has no control over prices, which he does if he gets on the phone or gets off his basketball court or whatever he's doing at the time. I mean, he should be focused on OPEC and getting those prices down. That's what he should be focused on. Yes. Well, I would have handled Libya much differently. First of all, I don't know who the rebels are, and I've said it many times. The rebels I hear are controlled by Iran and al-Qaeda. So, you know, we make them sound like they're at a Gone with the Wind. It's wonderful, the beautiful rebels. It's so romantic. Isn't it great? You could end up with worse than Gaddafi, perhaps. So I have a real problem having our great military people lose their lives in Libya, and we don't even know what we're getting into. And I've always said, I'd go for Libya, but I want the oil. You know, in the old days, when you win a war, you win a war. Nowadays, you win a war, we lose lives, we spend billions of dollars, and then we come out and we go back home. And we have all of our wounded to take care of. We have all of the dead soldiers and dead military. And what do we get? Nothing. This is interesting, Libya, because the Arab League, which is Saudi Arabia, and many of the wealthiest nations in the world, told us to go in and take out Gaddafi. Now, if they would have said that to me, I would have said $5 billion right now. You know what? Just for the question, they would have given you all of that money. They would have paid it in 2 seconds. The other question I ask is this. We get no oil from Libya. We get no oil. China, which is taking over the world economically because they're smart, meaning their leaders are much smarter. China, taking over the world, gets a big portion of its oil from Libya. They're Libya's biggest customers. Why isn't China involved? Why are we involved with Libya and China's not involved? And China, by the way, the IMF came out 2 days ago. They said by 2016, China's bigger than we are. And you know why they're bigger? Because they're making our products. If they didn't make our products, they wouldn't be at all bigger.
How do you stop U.S. companies sending jobs to China? What would you do?
It's so easy. China is taking unfair advantage of the United States and other countries by a total manipulation of their currency. If they continue to manipulate their currency, if I'm in office and I decide to run and win, within 1 day, they're going to be told, you keep manipulating your currency, we're going to tax you 25%. Now, that's going to do 2 things. First of all, they'll stop manipulating at the mere thought of it if they believed it. But they don't believe this administration because when the president of China comes to the United States, we hold a state dinner for him in the White House. Now, here's a guy that's been screwing our country for years. They're going to make $300 billion profit, call it profit, this year. $300 billion, more than that. And we hold a state dinner. And the reason is because they manipulate their currency brilliantly. And by the way, I have no anger at China. If you can get away with it, I mean, if I was from China, I'd be very proud of my leaders. But I'm from this country, and I'm proud of this country, but I'm not proud of our leaders because they're allowing the world to take advantage of us. They are allowing the world to rip us off like never before. And by the way, when you talk about budget deficits, the deficits because our economy, how can our economy ever get good? How can our economy ever be strong, ever, when we have other countries making our product? It can't happen. I watched Ben Bernanke not long ago say, no, unemployment's going to be bad for a long time. You know why? Because India is taking so many jobs through outsourcing. China is making our products, so we don't have. I look at places like Newton, Iowa, where Maytag moved out and they moved into Mexico and devastated the town. So If you put a tax on Chinese products, unless they change their way, you're going to start bringing jobs back to this country and bringing them back fast. Or, and I think this is more likely, China will change its policies so that we can now compete. And it's real easy. And remember this, and I say it, we have all the cards. They don't. Because if we pull back on China, by the way, in 2016, they're not going to be bigger than us. Because they're going to be bigger than us because they're making our products. And they make products for others, but they make products for us big league. So if we ever pulled back on that, China is not bigger than us. China has got a big problem. And just remember what I said. We have all the cards. They don't have the cards. They have $1 trillion in debt. A lot of money, but it's peanuts compared to the overall big ball of the world. Peanuts. We have all of the cards. The reason they loan us money is because they take in so much money from us and some others, but mostly from us. And remember the number. Over $300 billion this year, and they're taking our jobs. Pretty sad. And the president could solve that so easily. Instead of having state dinners, he could solve that so easily.
Mr. Trump, what do you hope to learn here today from the people of New Hampshire that will play into your decision whether to run or not?
Well, I was very honored because I just saw a poll in New Hampshire, and I'm doing very well. And frankly, a man that lives in New Hampshire is, not doing so well. And that amazes me. He lives here. But, you have to understand, I'm running against some people that I happen to like. It's always tough when you run, if I decide to run, against people that you like. It's always tough. But the fact is, when you live in New Hampshire and you're a few points up on Trump, that's not saying much. And you've been campaigning for 6 years, and I haven't campaigned at all because I really haven't. I mean, I have not announced. But that's a pretty bad statement when you're almost even in a poll, and here I am.
What would you hope to see when you talk to people here today? What do you hope? What kind of input are you looking for? What will help you?
Well, I'm going to look. I mean, there's one example that I saw the other day where, there's one example that I saw the other day that's amazing. $276 million prison built in New Hampshire. The latest, the greatest, and the town is devastated because the federal government now doesn't have the money to open it. It's pretty pathetic. And it's very unfair to New Hampshire, and it's very unfair to that part of New Hampshire. But they spent $276 million to build a prison, and the town is all for it, and they have great employment prospects, and the federal government now doesn't have the money to open the prison. So I'm going to see some of that, and I'm going to see lots of different things. All right, how about one more question? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Trump, what would your campaign in New Hampshire look like? Would you be traveling with this level of security throughout it?
Well, I don't know what my campaign in New Hampshire is going to look like. I mean, I'm going to just tell it like it is. Look, I know how to make money. I've always known how to make money. Now, this country is broke. The United States is broke. We're a debtor nation. I leave places like, you go to Saudi Arabia, you go to Abu Dhabi, you go to Qatar, you go to China. You leave airports that are the most incredible places in the world. You land at LaGuardia. It's old, it's broken, it's falling apart. And even the people that run it say you were right in making that statement. Same thing with Kennedy, same thing with Newark, same thing with LAX. When was the last time, if you go to China, as an example, bridges being built, massive bridges. When's the last time we built a bridge in this country, other than a little toy?
Isn't that what the president's trying to do with the stimulus package?
The president, look, I know you're a big Obama fan. The president doesn't know what he's doing because of your questions. The president doesn't know what he's doing. The fact is, you come to this country, when was the last time, that you saw a bridge, a big bridge being built? You don't see it. When was the last time you saw a big, beautiful new airport? You don't see it. You leave places like that, and then you come home, and it's very, very sad. So I'll make the decision sometime prior to June. In fact, people say, oh, you can make it in June. I said, you don't understand. I've been telling people for 3 months that I'm going to make it prior to June. I have people that want to represent me. I have a lot of people. They're all saying, oh, you don't have to make it in June. You can make it in July. You can make it in August. I say, you don't understand. That's a politician. That's what it gets us into trouble. I said that I will make the decision sometime prior to June, and that's when I'll do it.
Will you engage in retail politics in New Hampshire?
I'll engage in a lot of politics in New Hampshire. I have a lot of friends that live in New Hampshire. I've had a good relationship with New Hampshire. As I told you, you could really say that this whole thing started in 1988 in New Hampshire when I came up to make a totally unrelated speech, and people viewed that. I think I made a good speech, frankly, because people viewed that almost as a, like, why isn't he running? But it really started in New Hampshire with that speech.
So, Mr. Trump, do you have the temperament and the fortitude to put up with the fact that every week potential voters in New Hampshire and other key states will say to you, no, you're fired?
I think I have the temperament. I really do. I think I have the temperament. I think what I would do is make this country rich again. If I decide to run, and that's a big decision for me, including the fact, frankly, that I would have to give up one of the most successful shows on television, which is a lot of money and a lot of prestige and a lot of power. You know, it's very cool being a television star. It's very cool. And I'd have to give that up. And I'd have to give a lot of other things up. But I would make, if I ran and if I won, I would make this country rich again. I would make this country powerful again, and I would make this country respected again. And maybe that last point is the most important. The United States would be respected again. Thank you all very much. I'm going to take a tour.
The president just spoke. Sir, the president just spoke and called you Carnival Barker and a sideshow.